Welcome to another episode of Wiki-linkS. I'm one of your hosts, Junior Nelson, alongside my illustrious group of co-hosts. Everyone introduce yourselves again.
Yeah, I'm Alex.
Well, I'm Malcolm.
I'm Jake.
Brayden.
Technically, since Alex and I have been at every one, we're the hosts, and you guys are all guests.
That's totally fair. That's fair.
Which one did I miss?
You missed. You were in Florida for one. What one was it? It was
Was
I
it
wasn't
Monkey
there.
Boy?
Oh yeah, it was Gombe.
Monkey Boy.
Oh yeah, it was the
Chimpan-
monkeys.
Chimpor.
Yeah.
That was a good
Which
one.
is good because
I'm so mad I missed the Coney 2012.
It was
by
a
the
good
way.
one. It was pretty good.
Oh my gosh. When I was like 12, I did the Coney 2012 thing.
What the hell?
You don't do
Yeah,
Coney
you
20.
went-
You went
Wow.
and kidnapped.
Unless
alongside
you're
him.
Coney.
I went and like bought the posters.
You bought the box?
Actually, no, I didn't buy
Okay.
the box. I like downloaded the PDFs of the posters and I like printed them out, and I printed out like 200 posters.
Dude, I remember. Do you remember his name was Zach? He was super tall, like 7 feet, and he would get the posters and just put them really high in the halls of our elementary school, not
And
elementary school, middle
and
school.
the teachers couldn't reach it.
And the teachers couldn't reach him. It was the best.
Oh yeah, tall guy.
so you kind of led a movement, the Oak Canyon Junior High.
like I probably like 25 people. I also did a Facebook group like, back in the day when like I did a bunch of Facebook groups when I was a kid. Like I would do a Facebook group for like Percy Jackson.
I remember that, dude. I was in that Facebook group.
We're essentially continuing that legacy with
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
this
We
is
had a
just-
few comments of people that were like, I remember like putting up these posters,
Oh, yeah.
or like I
Oh
remember
my gosh.
like thinking. I remember I thought it was someone running for president, and like
Well, I put them. What I did is because I organized like this group of people, and all these people came and met at my house, and we like spray painted T-shirts and stuff, and then we didn't know where to go because we're like in the middle of like suburban Utah, and so we just went around the neighborhood like trick or treat style and put it on doors, and then the neighbors like came to my parents and like, is your kid like politically active? Like, is he trying to like start some sort of movement? Like, what's going on?
and your dad was like proud probably.
No.
Oh, he wasn't.
So I think this is my hot take. After it, I was thinking about the whole podcast, and I'm like, I think Nick's a racist. He starts Black History Month off with a podcast about a black guy kidnapping black kids.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not cool, dude.
Nick
I think
is
Nick
racist?
is a racist.
And we
There
can't,
are
we
better
can't,
black
and he
people we
can't
could've done it.
defend
We could've.
himself because he's not.
No,
here
that's
today.
why I did it here. I wouldn't say it to his face. He'd kick my ass.
All right, Junior. So let's talk.
All right.
Let's
Yeah.
go over the history of these.
When was
Yeah.
this?
When
in
was
history?
this?
So,
Paint the setting.
Let's paint the setting a little bit, right? So, the Sea Peoples of the late Bronze Age have been referred to by some as one of the top 10 greatest mysteries of all time, right?
Top
Who are the-
10.
who are
What are the
these-
other top 10?
Who are
What
the
else is-
Who are these people who are saying that?
Like Scooby Doo in the
Like
game.
Like, we could never figure out who they are.
like history
Oh,
people,
Scooby.
history people.
Old man Bronson.
And we're not talking about like true
What if the
crime.
Sea
or
Peoples were
anything.
just old man Bronson?
It probably was.
They take off the mask. Well, the interesting thing is there is a bit of that here. We're going to have to Scooby-Doo this shit, as they say, and look into who are the Sea People. And I want to sort of set the stage, right? Do any of you guys know much about the late Bronze Age?
I'm looking. I know there's Egyptians, there's Mesopotamians, there's Jews probably.
Before we do this, can I just say we're gonna say BC and not BCE because
Yeah.
we rep our boy
Yeah.
JC.
Before
Exactly.
Common Era. How about you get Common Era some?
And then and then when we talk about present, we say AD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to go off on like a crazy tangent, but what do people even believe? Like why now is the common era and why then was before the common era? If they don't believe in Jesus Christ,
Exactly.
It's just
That's what I'm
because
saying. It's like-
that's the setting. Is the setting is after Christ, and
That's like, have you heard that Louis C.K. joke where he's like, if you're ever wondering what religion won, the Christians won. Because ask, a Muslim what year it is. He's like, death to all Christians. It's 2022 after Christ.
Yeah.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
So we got this big Mediterranean thing, right? And we
Yeah.
got people and they're trading shit.
Yeah,
and
so-
it's like paradise.
What
Yeah,
year?
the-
What's the year?
So this is this is like the end of 1200 BC, like 1250 or so BC to 1180 BC.
This is the time of Ramses the Third, if I remember
Times
right.
of Ramses the
Exactly.
Oh, we all know
So,
Ramses.
so this
III.
is the end
Legend.
of the golden age of Egypt. It's the end of sort of the golden age of all that part of the world, and it really set into what became like antiquity as we know it. But this is pre all of that. So it's pre the Spartans, pre
Greece.
Pre-democracy,
Oh,
basically.
pre-Persia, pre-Assyria, like it's way back there.
So, at this time, is it believed that like the Jewish people were slaves still?
Yeah, I think so.
I think
I don't really know the Bible.
I think it's like 100 years when the sea people just went ape shit and shit. The Jews had been free for like 150 years.
Oh, good timing.
yeah.
Great timing, huh?
Right.
Because it was the first Ramses, right?
It was like first or second Ramses.
So
And he was-
Yeah.
second Ramses was Ramses the Great, and he was the one who like built all the monuments, and he conquered all the way up to what is now Turkey, and he conquered like down into lower Africa. Like he was the most bad A of all the Egyptian pharaohs. And then this guy Ramses the Third and Ramses II also has a little bit to do with this story, and we'll get into that. But Ramses the Third, he is pretty much like Ramses II's illegitimate, more or less weird branch off history.
He's a bastard.
Grandson. Yeah. So Ramses II, one of his sons became the pharaoh, and then there was a bunch of like random grandchildren that were becoming pharaohs, and then they're like, okay, let's bring it back. Let's get a real badass guy in here. And then they chose this dude who was sort of like, I think he was an illegitimate or like side wife grandson of Ramses II. And then that guy had a son, and he was Ramses III. And then Ramses III was really the last golden age pharaoh. After him, he was assassinated, and everything sort of went to shit.
All right, so Egyptians are kicking
So
ass.
the Egyptians right now, they're just kicking ass. And at this point, like, they had started to recede a little bit. And I think we'll get into, when we get into the theories of what really happened, things were starting to go downhill already. Like, things were starting to get worse. And
because of natural causes or because the Egyptians were assholes?
Or because God gave them 7 plagues because they wouldn't let Moses
That
free.
also, yeah. People don't come back from that.
it could be a mix of all three. And that's the real interesting thing when you get into the causes of the fall of the Bronze Era is, like, we think it's this reason, but then there's another group over here that's like, no, it's for sure this reason. And everyone fighting to know really what it is what creates this mystery. That they're saying, like, if we could just go back in time and see what happened, it's probably going to be radically different from all the theories that people truly have today. But it's just been this huge mystery throughout the historical community. They're like, what the hell happened?
By
at the fall of the Bronze
historical
Age?
community, do you mean like the guys on History Channel at 2 o'clock? They're like, this
They're
was
like-
all built by aliens.
Yeah, they're like, we ran through some theories, and it's possible that it was natural or societal collapse. But what we've come down to as the most logical is Nazi alien zombies.
Nazi alien zombies created a spaceship called Unami, and
And it's worth noting that they were also probably using time travel because the cave drawings, if you look at them, it makes sense.
if you look at them,
History
it
Channel
just makes
sucks,
sense.
dude. I
It
try to
sucks
watch
so
it.
bad.
When I was a kid, History Channel was just like World War II in color. And it was,
Yeah.
you know, the other thing
was
on History
dope.
Channel was mail call with the guy that was the
The sergeant in Full Metal Jacket. Yeah.
You guys remember that show?
Hell yeah, I remember that show.
History
Mail
Channel.
call.
History Channel just like makes shit up.
Yeah,
like,
now
all
it's
the
about
time.
aliens.
They do.
And
Have
shit.
you seen the one on Navy SEALs?
No.
Huh.
It's the wildest shit. They're like, every Navy SEAL could easily get into Princeton. Like,
What?
You're telling me that instead of going to Princeton, you went into the military.
Why?
It's
Why
like,
Navy?
That's just very unrealistic.
Why Princeton?
they're
too?
just like portraying Navy SEALs as like superhuman in every way. It's like their IQ has to be 170 and above.
Yeah, but
They
you can
can-
have
like,
a
it's
good
like-
IQ,
it's
but
like-
you have to have good grades to get into Princeton.
It's like, I mean, I love my military brothers, but it's like typically, I mean,
Yeah, I don't know about all
it's
that.
like all the
History
smart
Channel.
ones go to reserves and go to use it to pay for school. It's like everyone else.
or the smart ones get a degree and then go to officer training, so they don't just go in as like a grunt, which I'm sure a lot of Navy SEAls did. but-
I rep the military. We will support you boys.
Support the military.
We support the boys.
It's funny because a lot of people legitimately think that the pyramids might have been made by aliens, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
No way.
I mean, when you think
Nowadays.
about it, it's kind of crazy, dude.
It is
'Cause
crazy.
The
They're
Great Pyramid
nuts.
of Giza was built when 2,200 BC.
Yeah.
Why they can't?
Like-
why is it crazy?
No,
many
it's
people
absolutely
were on the
insane
Earth, dude?
because
Like
of the shape.
7?
Because of the shape of the pyramid and like how precise it
Oh,
needed
yeah,
to be.
they-
Because it was covered in like limestone caps before. It was just like if you're when making a pyramid, you're going up from each side, and if your measurement is off by literally like half an inch, like you wouldn't have that nice of a top on top.
Yeah.
Like,
Or
you wouldn't have like its geometry. They literally
It's-
like measured everything.
It's
geometry
just it's just
on
triangles.
Yeah,
I
but
don't-
it's the biggest. It was like the biggest building for like till like maybe the Eiffel Tower or something.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
was that big for that long. And like we're questioning it now. Imagine you're some loser peasant out in the desert 2,000 years ago,
And
and the
that
craziest thing you had seen was like a 2-story house, and then you see it. It would be like seeing a building nowadays. You like go to Sudan, and all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, they've connected the Earth to the moon. Like what the?
I mean, like the distance between like even like Cleopatra and the Great Pyramid of Giza is the distance between us and like the Battle of Thermopylae in Greece. Like it's actually crazy.
and why I love this era in history, and this has just been one of my like huge nerdgasms in the past. year.
Vampires.
It's vampires. This is the era of mythology.
Here's my argument against your alien theory, or what makes the things crazy.
Would none of us said we
Nobody
believe that
said it's
theory?
alien. We just
Okay,
said
I'm
it
just
is
saying it is crazy they
crazy.
did it, but look at human history. The advancements of the last 100 years, like, are exponentially more than over the last 6,000 years.
Yeah, but the amount
So like,
of
I know that you're saying like they built a pyramid, that's insane. But were there any big buildings until
that's why it's so that's
1920?
that's why I would
it's
argue
impressive.
it's crazier because
but-
nowadays a crazy thing happens every week.
They built
and
that.
we've gotten used
They
to
built
it.
that like they built that big stone thing 4,000 years ago,
Mhm.
and they built castles and all this other stuff. Right? It's
Yeah.
not like we're looking at human history like it's advanced like crazy. But 100 years ago, you'd be like, oh, they built a big stone thing, and other people built other big stone things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're looking at it now in the frame of we have iPhones and the internet and like robots, but it's like I feel like pre-industrial revolution, it's like it's just this big stone thing they made. It's like it's impressive, it's massive, right? And
Yeah.
it probably blew people's minds, but it's like we're looking at it as like they built this thing and we've built this thing. Like it's, you know what I mean?
It's
The
just
thing
is,
it would
though,
be
I get what
hard to build now.
Even
I don't think
even
it would be
today.
hard. What are you talking about? They built
I don't know.
glass
I don't.
pyramids
I don't
now.
totally buy that argument.
That's
I'm
bullshit.
like, dude, we
They
build the
don't-
craziest shit now. You think we can't build a triangle?
Like I
That's
saw
what
some,
I'm saying.
I
dude.
saw something where this guy was like, I don't think we could build the pyramids now. I don't believe that.
Oh, we could.
But
if
we-
really
oh,
wanted
we
to.
could-
Built the
100%
pyramids. Now there's
could.
one in Las Vegas.
But-
out of glass.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
Dope.
building one out of stone of that like size
Still-
is incredibly
like,
like
s-
way
You know
how they
harder
did
than
it?
building
Okay,
it out of
you know how they
steel
did it?
and glass.
You know how they did it? They just threw like 1 million slaves at it. That's the answer.
Yeah.
That's how we did the
But-
railroad.
But it's also a lot of math.
we threw the Irishmen at them. We just paid them poor. We paid them like.
But it's
a
still
crap
is
ton of
crazy.
engineering.
no, it's crazy. I'm not gonna say it's not like, but people, we can build pyramids today.
No, I'm
just
saying we
don't
could-
because
I
they're
could- I'm saying we
impractical.
You're
build it.
arguing with someone who is not here.
I know. I'm arguing.
We could build.
I'm not
pyramids
arguing.
today.
I'm just saying.
Bro,
I'm just
promise it would
saying
cost billions
if
of dollars.
if they said, "Oh, we're building a replica of the pyramids like out here in Utah," it would be like, I mean, it'd cost probably, I mean, billions, you know?
It costs
You know why we
billions,
don't
and
build
it would
pyramids?
take years.
You know
It
why we
would
don't
take
build
years.
pyramids? Because they're impractical. Because the
That's
bottom
right.
is so goddamn big. Why do we build? You know why we build buildings in cities?
What's
because
Malcolm have
everything's
against
closed.
pyramids?
No, because I'm actually. I
Dude,
think
what did
pyramids
a
are kinda
pyramid
gay.
do to you, bro?
To be honest, I think they're kind of gay. Look, you know why we built skyscrapers really tall? Because we're squished together and we can only go up. So why would you build a huge thing that's like city blocks
Because there were
wide?
only 7 people on the earth
No,
anyways.
what
dude.
I'm
Like,
saying is, building pyramids now is retarded.
What I love about this era is it is just mythology. Like Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey were taking place in this era. Like Zeus and everything that the antiquity they wrote about, they were thinking back on this time period.
This was like their golden age. Like they were like, this is dope.
and they
Do you remember the old days when we just built pyramids, and now kids these days are just playing with the wheel?
well, if you think about it, in medieval times, they would look at Rome and look at the aqueducts and stuff, and they'd be like, these guys were gods. There's no way we could create something like this now because there was a fall in civilization.
How did they figure out that if you build places for water to go, it'll flow through it? Wow.
you really have.
I think
hate
some
the ancient
societies-
world.
I hate medieval world when they looked back and they were like, how did they have people vote?
Well, it was astounding.
I'm sorry they didn't go to school, you dick.
It took humanity way too long to figure out flight.
That is so judgmental of you for a guy who doesn't know how to fly.
Yeah, why not?
I understand the basic physics. It's propulsion and
Icarus
lift.
did it. Icarus did it a long time
Okay,
ago.
then build a
Icarus.
plane, Malcolm.
During the Bronze Age, Icarus flew.
Yeah, Icarus flew.
Too close to the sun.
It's like if today just everything fell apart and then we're back to wagons and shit, and then we're like, how did they build the Statue of Liberty? Like, how did they build like all this infrastructure? How did they build highways? How did they build these ships and planes and everything? Because for them, they had gone back in technology. So they looked at that stuff and they're like,
because everything collapsed.
yeah, because
the
everything
sea
collapsed.
people just went ape shit.
Yeah,
And,
that's it.
and then they had to rebuild from there. And so they looked at that stuff and they're like, it had to be the gods. And now they're
Dude, Europe rebuilt after World War II. They figured out how to do it pretty quick.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Today,
So back to the sea people though. I read all the theories. Most of them are really boring. You know, they're just like, oh, it's this group of people you've never heard of. And I'm like, I don't care. You know? And then I'm like, how is it like I get that it's a mystery, but it's just the mystery of linguistics, it feels like. It feels like we clearly know that there was maybe famines, there was some societal stuff, there was mines that probably went dry, and then all of a sudden all the people just were on their bums sitting there skipping stones in the ocean, you know, bouncing tennis balls against the cave walls, and they're just like, fuck, I'm just pissed off, and just went ape shit. And that seems to be that's the mystery of the sea people.
yeah. What's crazy is that they had gotten to a point where they were advanced. Like there was communication. They were writing letters for people in modern day Turkey to people in Egypt, and they were they were communicating. They were intermarrying.
Well, it was all the Egyptian Empire in a way. It was all they kind of had the
they
say.
were like America running the world economy, and Egypt was the center of that world economy. And at that time, that was the world. They didn't know about India. They didn't know about China.
I mean, they sound really advanced writing letters.
Dude, all these dead people, you know, that just their whole
we
life-
worked hard to establish society. And I'm
And
like,
here's
oh, you
Malcolm.
wrote a letter.
No, Malcolm has 0 inventions to his
Yeah,
name.
no, zero invention. And you know what?
You know
In
why?
1,000 years, they're gonna listen to this podcast and I'm like, this Malcolm guy's full of shit. He never teleported. Why didn't he just teleport? Dumbass.
You guys don't know what I've been working on in my basement. I could be close to time travel. I'm just struggling with the quantum mechanics, but I'm close.
After this, they had to reinvent writing.
So basically, do you think that it's possible that the whole theory of the Sea Peoples, which is just all of a sudden huge groups of like unstoppable warriors coming from the sea, killing everybody, and then moving on and killing another society. Is it possible that that is just like an like a myth,
An algorithm,
almost like a yeah, it wasn't actually just our own fault and our own like it wasn't our own like pride that all of a sudden brought our society down. It's actually like someone else came and killed us.
And that's exactly what I want to talk about. So thank you, Malcolm, for that.
Is it plausible that it's the League of Shadows?
The League of Shadows.
Because they do say they do that.
Shot
Liam
Ghoul's
Neeson
pretty
says
old.
that.
He could have been there.
So this is the quote from Ramses the Third, right? When the Sea People showed up and he's fighting against these guys, this is how Ramses the Third describes it, right? Now the northern countries which were in their isles were quivering in their bodies. They penetrated the channels of the Nile's mouth. Their nostrils had ceased to function, so that their desire to breathe the breath. What's going on?
You're reading this with a bunch of children is the problem. You said penetrate, and Alex literally makes this face.
All right.
I just look over at Alex, just like.
So it says penetrated the mouth.
The Nile's mouth. All right, we're gonna pick up after.
Who's this
that.
Niall?
Yeah, dude.
I think he was in One
Niall's a
Direction.
pervert, bro.
I'm trying to have a Dan Carlin moment right now, guys.
Who the hell Niall? What her number, bro?
So dumb.
That's so stupid.
I'm gonna
Okay.
try to keep together. Holy shit.
Okay, let's get back into this.
Don't name your daughter
His
Niall.
next thing's gonna be like, then they.
It's gonna be like, and then the sea, then the Sea People gently caressed
Yeah.
our
fertile-
our fertile lands and impregnated them with their seeds.
Get back into it.
Yeah.
So His Majesty is gone for. So now they're talking about the Pharaoh, because back in the day, the Pharaoh would go out and like battle with his men, right? His Majesty has gone forth like a whirlwind against them, fighting on the battlefield like a runner. The dread of him and the terror of him had entered their bodies. They were capsized. Anything.
Wasn't even that good.
So much. Even related.
Wasn't even
Entered their bodies.
Who wrote this, bro?
Bro, more like it sounds like
This is the 50 Shades of Grey lady, bro.
The Egyptians. This is translation of hieroglyphics.
yeah. Who the hell?
This is what they
translated
use
this?
the Rosetta Stone to translate.
Bro, Rosetta Stone more like Rosetta Bone.
So dumb.
All right.
The fear entered their bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their hearts are taken away, their souls flown away, their weapons are scattered in the sea. His arrow pieces with him who he has wished among them. While the fugitive becomes one fallen into the water, His Majesty is like an enraged lion, attacking his assailant with his paws, plundering on his right hand and powerful on his left hand. Like Seth destroying the serpent, evil of character, in Amun-Re, who had overthrown him, the lands had crushed for him. Every land under his feet, king of Upper and Lower Egypt, lord of the two lands, Ramses III. So this is like the propaganda version.
Yeah, because I'm like, didn't
Yeah,
they lose?
exactly.
This is the propaganda version of the story. And the Egyptians at this point were so prideful and so confident in themselves. Like at this point, this civilization had existed in a solid state, like without falling by wayside or switching up locations for 1,000 years.
Does it make you think, like, you know, America's the longest lasting, like, constitutional government in the world right now?
Yeah.
But it's only been, like, 300 years. Isn't that
Yeah,
kind of crazy?
it's like 246, I think, and the average age of an empire when they collapse is 250.
Really?
Yeah.
And then
But the good empires can go for long.
I mean,
time.
Egypt was what, 2,000 years?
Yeah. So we're like 10% in.
Egypt. Yeah. and China, really.
It's like you have a collapse and then it goes back.
Yeah. So, and even after the collapse, Egypt was still able to continue in the same state as it was. It just never was the same again. They couldn't build pyramids again. They couldn't do the same things that they were doing back then. And so, at this point, the historians, they like, back in the day, like 100 years ago, the historians, whatever happened in history, they're like, oh, war. Yeah. It was like this group, and they battled, and they fought, and they used these weapons. And because back in the day, that's what was fun in learning about history and archaeology. They would find swords, and they would theorize on the different battles, because that's mostly what they knew back then.
They'd LARP.
War. Yeah, they would LARP it. And
That's what was primarily written about by those.
yeah. Like if you look at the text, the Egyptians are saying, "Oh, at this time we were battling these people, and at this time we were battling these people." And so when we all of a sudden within the next 50 years, the entire civilization ceases to be what it had been for the previous 1,000 years. The only explanation for historians at that point was, oh, they must have gotten really screwed up by this group of sea people, right? And so it lists, we call them sea people today because some French guy was like, oh, they are the people of the sea?
Yeah, like
I think it was a Spanish person. The sea people.
Oh, it's definitely a
Sea.
French guy because he's kind of gay. He's like, oh yes, the seamen.
Oh, oui, they came and they plundered and they took whatever they want.
they went into
Oh.
the mouth of the Nile.
The sea people would not take no for an answer.
It was the French that were translating the hieroglyphs.
Well, that's why it's so
that's
gay,
why it's so
dude.
gay.
This is the most homophobic episode of the show.
It's not
No, it's not
homophobic.
homophobic. It just sounds gay. It's
gay.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, we're reading it. We're enjoying ourselves.
We're having a good
Maybe
time.
we're gay.
The French just make everything so sexual. Here's a question. So, how come there isn't writing among the sea peoples? Did they just destroy everything and then just like dip? Is that the like? Were they like not really? Were they like barbaric essentially? And
Yeah, they're pretty much pirates. They didn't have written language to
now
the
you
same
hooked me. They were
extent.
pirates. I mean,
They came from different islands.
Malcolm, you have a lot in common with these people. They're pirates, okay? And they hate triangles and pyramids and shit.
if
They
their
wanted-
goal was to take on Egypt because they just thought the pyramids sucked,
Just they
then
suck.
I'm like pro sea peoples.
You're very pro sea people. Yeah.
Did you see the theory that they're Italian? I like
Yeah,
it's like it
yeah.
was like Joe Pesci in a suit, and he goes up to Ramses with a gun. I guess if silence around, and he's like, "You motherfucker."
Well, and like at that point, there weren't really people
Yeah.
in Italy that were a civilization. It was just tribes.
It was, no, it was, yeah, it was just.
It was just the mafia. Yeah.
It was like the Strombolis.
So one of the things that I think is interesting and maybe unique about the sea people thing is that usually you have like either another ideological or political group comes in, conquers, and takes over and stuff.
Yeah.
The sea people didn't give a shit about that. They seemed to just like, that they were just mad and just like uprising, destroy, and move on.
Yeah.
And I think that's super interesting because it's like, this is a world way back anciently where it's like nothing was like created by them in a way. You know, it's like all of their stuff was like either like the gods blessed them or the gods cursed them. So for them to kind of break out of that thinking and just think like, you know what, this whole system's bullshit. Like that's a groundbreaking
but then
moment.
not keep it, for
but not
themselves.
take it.
Yeah,
And it's a
weren't
group
able
of a
to-
lot of different people, which makes you think there had to be a leader guy. And for this leader guy to like just do it and then just be like, yeah, don't build any monuments. Let's just like, I'm cool. That's the chaddest dude of all of history, for sure, no doubt.
I think when we're talking about the concept of the sea people, I think in my mind until this conversation, it's been that people from somewhere else just came and went and then left. And just as I think about it, I'm like, it sounds a lot like famine and maybe mismanagement by the Egyptian Empire and a lot of things, and maybe them building big ass pyramids and not like taking care of the people just led to like a lot of these groups that weren't like ethnically Egyptian and like racially Egyptian to just kind of all band together and be like, this whole system's bullshit. Like Alex was saying, like it sounds almost more like a revolution by people who had no plans of governing and no real like
or power or like ability
like
to
I don't know.
govern.
Like, think about like yeah, exactly. Think about like think about if some of the people now that are like calling for complete change all of a sudden took over. It would still suck, right? Like the people I know that are like full on super progressive and they're like, we need to end the Constitution and this capitalist system. They have no plans. If they took over, if they all of a sudden like killed everybody in power and all of a sudden like just took over and had all the power, the whole country would collapse still. You know what I mean?
And then we would be what Egypt was after the
Yeah.
fall of the Bronze Age.
Exactly. Like we gotta like if we're gonna like turn the system over, we gotta have a plan post revolution, which is a problem with a lot of revolutions. I think is like you're just calling for. I mean, here's an example. In Seattle last year, they took over the city block, and it was like this is gonna be an anarchist free land where everyone is free. And within like one day, just one asshole was like the leader of the whole thing, right? And he messed the whole thing up. Yeah, Chaz. Like, and it like. Pure anarchy doesn't exist, right? Because it's like within a day somebody will be the leader, and it's like it sounds like a bunch of people rose up and then they had no plans for what would happen after they kind of took back what they thought
We
was
just
theirs.
sort of wanted to come in here and vibe.
I could see some type of like hidden. I mean, not even hidden because we have so much evidence and so many civilizations that have come like since.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it was like an outsider. I mean, obviously, it sounds like Egypt wasn't in the. I mean, they were kind of in dire straits, and so it was a good time for them to attack. But it's like you see, you have all these like connected stories of people coming from the sea, and they don't really like describe exactly. I mean,
sort of
it sounds like they
disagree.
describe somewhat.
They describe what they look like. They describe what they fight like, what they wear, but they don't say where they come from. I think it's interesting that you mentioned immigrants before because some of the theories is this was a mass migration and something awful was happening in the west part of the Mediterranean. And like this is when people theorize that like the Minoan civilization was affected by a great earthquake or a flood.
And then people migrated, and then there was infighting.
And like whatever was going on in Greece, like there was either volcanoes and famine and earthquakes, and it caused this group of people to leave that part of the world to the more stable part of the world. And then the more stable part of the world was dealing with the same earthquakes, the same famine, the same effects, and with this huge influx of probably migrants and then raiders. People were like Vikings at the time. They wanted to sack and pillage. They wanted to take what was there
raiders.
and then
I think that and this is theory, I could be totally wrong, but from stuff I've read about war and stuff, I don't really think it would be like a somewhat, it doesn't sound like a well-organized invading force.
No.
Because name a time in history where people have invaded and not stuck around to keep the resources they invaded for. That's why war happens, right? Every war, even if you look and say, no, it was because of this ideology, it was all for resources. So I don't
It was
really
because
believe
chimp
in
angry, and chimp needs food.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe in I believe
Back
in
to
an
the-
uprising where people are like this whole thing is wrong and they band together and then all of a sudden they're like we don't have a plan. I get that, but like I don't believe in like people from an island being like we got to go take over Egypt and then just running through it and being like we're not going to stick around for like the richness of the Nile, which is like the most fertile land in the whole Middle East. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't sound like
interesting is like
that doesn't sound like
one of the
a
theories.
sensible invader.
So I just had like a hypothesis because I was like, well, sea people. I mean, what would cause like a sea people like on islands to kind of like leave like something mass? It'd be like rising sea levels. I mean, obviously, it's like you have ice ages and all that. So I just looked it up.
Dude,
just
this is
I had this
wrinkly brain, dude.
hypothesis. Bronze Age people, this is the name of the thing. Bronze Age people thrive despite dramatic loss of land due to sea level rise, new study suggests. So this is actually in 2020.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. That's actually a good point.
the group that we do know did settle, and this is the one where they are the number one for sure. They think this is what happened. Is a group was called the Peliset, and Egyptians when they translate Egyptian, they can't translate vowels because they didn't write with vowels. And so the Paliset, if you just rearrange the vowels, it is Palestine. It is the Philistines, you know. So they're pretty sure that one of these groups left Crete, because biblical historians, they think that the Palestinians, they left Crete and then they came to Canaan and they were like, okay, let's set up here. And they're pretty sure this was the moment where they migrated, and they might have sacked and pillaged along the Hittites and the Egyptians on the way, but they weren't. That wasn't their final stop. They were heading to.
So what you're saying is the Palestinians aren't natives to the Western Bank?
Damn, dude.
Junior,
Let's be careful
man.
there.
well.
Moving on.
This was a long time ago.
So, okay, wait.
I mean,
Here's
he's
a
really native anyway.
yeah.
I mean,
Here's a theory. Or I guess I'll pose a question, and it's about technology. So could hypothetical? Who do you think would win? The whole Egyptian Empire, or Coney and like 2,000 child soldiers with fully loaded AK-47s?
How much ammo do they have?
They have enough.
They have like a good.
They have
amount.
enough. If they have
I'm
enough, they
taking
win.
I'm taking the child soldiers.
I'm taking the child soldiers. Yeah.
You think they would beat the whole Egyptian
I think
Empire?
they
right?
I think
That's a
Egypt-
good joke.
Let's
That's a good
say-
joke to start to wrap
Is
up.
it-
Let's say
is this-
500 child soldiers, somewhat well organized,
Yeah.
AKs, RPGs. They
RPGs.
still
What-
have
what-
flip flops and soccer shirts.
but-
and stuff.
The
Do
Egyptians
they
would
have-
immediately start worshiping them and claim them as gods, and they would take over overnight.
And Coney would get what he wants.
Yeah, you would get what he wants.
What do they have vehicles?
Um,
They have like a
I
tank.
don't know if the
no, let's say they don't have.
No, they don't have a
vehicles.
tank.
they have like jeeps.
Yeah,
They have a jeep.
Yeah, they have like
How
three
many?
Jeeps.
How many
They
jeeps?
have three Jeeps and 3 kids old enough to
Because
drive. 'em.
3 jeeps versus like 4,000 chariots. I think the Egyptians would win.
No, but you sit there.
You shoot the
they have a
horses.
50
You just pop the horses.
Yeah, they
with
have
your
a
AK.
50 cal on the Jeep.
Yeah.
And they're just
Yeah.
driving, and the chariots are chasing them, and they're just going. That's
And the-
game over, dude.
Game over. I think the fear factor is what would totally win.
They just start hearing.
They'd be like, they
Let's
have
say
a metal
hypothetically-
chariot with a dragon that spits fire.
And they're like,
It'd be all-
and they're
They
like,
would be God.
and then Coney's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. He's like, load up the RPG, and all of a sudden, like, they're like, they get to the pyramids, and he just shoots at the pyramid or the Sphinx, blows the Sphinx up
Blows
with an
its
RPG.
nose off.
You've taken away the things they worship and love. What if that's the reason its nose is
I am
off?
the captain now.
Yeah, then
Dude,
I
there's some
think-
interesting theories about the Sphinx we can get into another time.
I think like you go back in time with modern guerrilla war tactics, and the Egyptian Empire would be effed up by Coney's army.
Well, you could become the Egyptian Empire,
Yeah,
Yeah, you would.
and then they would look back and they're like, "Did those guys have guns? Were they
The cave
God?"
drawings, these look like oddly like AK-47s.
Feel like one of the kids has a boom box and one of the things. It's like, that's weird.
Yeah, man. And then you're just screwed over by the sea
Well,
people.
I think we can all agree that the sea people thing was caused by like a ton of different stuff happening all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've gotten to the bottom to.
We can all agree that
Bottom.
pyramids aren't that cool, right?
Yeah.
Go to
they're
hell.
overrated.
I mean,
Pyramids are cool.
Pyramids
Go
are
to
sick.
hell, dude.
pyramids are cool, but they're not that cool.
Like
This is the pyramid.
pro
this is
pro
the,
bass shop pyramids, sort of cool.
This is the hill I'll die on,
Egyptian
dude. I
pyramids.
think pyramids are the overrated.
I'm gonna take you to Egypt.
I
and
think
we're
if
gonna,
the Egyptians-
we're gonna go inside the pyramid and then
There's like one room inside of it.
Can you go inside pyramids
Yeah,
in
the
Egypt
pyramids
today?
didn't even
I
build
Or
it.
can you just look at them?
The
You can't go in-
Egyptians
you
didn't
can't go in
even.
the great pyramids, but you can go in.
there's
the lesser
people.
ones.
I've
Yeah.
seen videos of people who get to go inside. Like,
No, I've seen Obama
Really?
went inside of them one time.
Obama?
Yeah, and he went in and there was a drawing. And Obama said, "Hey, it looks like me." Not even kidding.
Did he really say it?
I thought it was so funny.
Look at those ears.
That's pretty
I was
awesome.
like, he was making fun of himself because he was like, "I got big ears," and I was like, "That's
Yeah.
pretty funny."
That's
Obama.
pretty cool.
it's gonna be a weird one because it's like this is the most
I'm just gonna go
like,
for it.
scientific.
I've decided to rate the articles before we have the conversation because when we're in the conversation, I'm always like, I really like this, and I go. So I'm going to say this might be wildly different than your guys's, but I'm going to go with an 8. I think that it's just a really detailed, well-formed, tons of information.
Found it.
All right, good. Yeah, well, it's in. You're keeping it. Keeping your bit. Yeah, I think it's an 8. I think it's a really solid, like, great history article. Maybe I'm going to go 8.5. I changed my mind. I changed my rule. It's a little higher.
So what I was thinking before I got here, I was thinking like a 7.5. Like it's not as on the face as interesting as some of the other ones we talked about, just because it doesn't have like a story to tell. But it's so much information, and if you really wanted to like look into each one of these physical groups and like understand more of where they found the evidence of this group and that group, then it's all there. This article has all the information.
I think that it's a little long. I think this is more of an article I'd read if I was really studying the whole idea of the Bronze Age. Personally, I lean towards like articles that have a story, and because whenever they're written in like a narrative fashion, there's always like the dumbest shit in them that's so hilarious. And so this is fun. It was interesting, and I learned a lot. But it's something that I'm like, I don't know if I would read this. It would take me a while. It took me a while to read it. It took me a couple days.
Like this is the type of article I just read like over a course of time, just because
I do the same thing.
I want to learn stuff. It's not like the article where I'm like,
I wouldn't send this to
let's see,
someone.
like, a
this
funny
isn't an
story.
entertaining.
This
like,
isn't something I would share and say, you got to read this article. This is hilarious, or this
Yeah.
is crazy. You know.
Yeah.
No, it's no horse. It's no Mr. Hands.
We'll have to tell you about that, Braden. You're not in the group chat.
yeah. All right, Jake. What do you think?
I mean, I didn't read most of it. I read through like some of it, but like, I think it's a great article. It has great information, but I mean, same points as you guys. When I think about like a Wikipedia article, I think of something like short that I can like, you know, read in like a session in like the shower or something. You know, it's just like it's like something that will take like a max of like 20-30 minutes to read. So, but because it does have a lot of good put together information, I'm gonna give it a 6. I wouldn't like send this to a friend and say, "Hey, like read this."
No.
No.
Unless they're really into like.
Unless they're like, well, it's like if we're having a discussion,
Unless,
he's like, man, I wish I could learn more about sea people. Then
Yeah,
I'd be like, I have the article for
Unless
you.
we just had this conversation, but without the context of the article, and we're like, what were the sea people like?
What are some of those theories?
Yeah.
No, but like I think it was a good article. I give it a 6. I mean, it's worth reading, but at the same time, it's like for my recommendation review, I wouldn't recommend someone to read it. Like, just be like, hey, this is a great, like, everyone can read this article. Like, it takes some, like, you know, some attention.
Yeah. My thing is kind of like I F's with history,
Okay.
right? So obviously I love historical articles. But at the same time, this one's kind of dull as hell. Like, as you're reading it, like, it's like, I love the information. I love, like, knowing about the late Bronze Age, and like, I just like knowing stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, how it's written is kind of super lame.
It's
And
flat.
It's clearly written by a guy who wears those tan vests.
He's got patches.
Has-
on
has
his-
a
on his
cool
blazer,
title.
right?
Yeah.
It's that guy. And so, like, it's like, you know, 10 on information, right?
Yeah,
We love
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff. 4 on interest.
Yeah.
So we'll
Absolutely,
just
that's great.
we'll just bring it to an even 7. You know?
Yeah. I
That
think
seems
that's
fair.
probably how I would have,
Yeah, that's
a
totally
good-
fair.
in my head, thought of it too. That's a good
Yeah,
way to
and,
word
and
it.
totally like if you, I don't know if any of you guys suffered through the first few parts of this article.
I did, yeah.
Like it's a lot of like, and in this location, Metzotet was discovered in a cave where they found this.
This is one of those articles where I actually got more information from like a YouTube video than the article
Like
that I watched about the sea people.
I read it twice, like just because there had been so much time.
There
in
had been a
between.
lot of time.
But when I read it the first time, I had little context, and then I listened to like podcasts, I watched the documentary, I watched like 5 YouTube videos, and then when reading it again, there was a lot more like, okay, I know specifically which groups they're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's just so dense with information, and I think that you summarized the whole article like so perfectly. So the final score for our group is 7.2.
Okay.
Where does that put it?
Do we have?
like third or fourth.
Where's the rankings?
I mean, it's up there.
That's up there. 7.2.
Yeah, the past few have been like 6s.
They have been.
Yeah.
It's third.
Sweet.
Third behind
That's fair.
Kilmeyer and Gombe Chimpor.
Makes sense. That makes.
Because
Total
I think
sense.
I gave the other one like a 5 the other day.
You gave it like a 4 point because you matched the wikis.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, the what's it called? IMDb score.
Oh,
the,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
Coney
Coney?
2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave that like a 4.2. I thought it was
that was
pretty
a fun conversation. I liked listening.
It was good.
It was fun. Like I'm not rating conversation ever.
Yeah.
The podcast.
Yeah, no, the conversation's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
wouldn't-
fun.
Honestly, it was.
I would rate my friends right now because all of you guys disagree with me about pyramids. You guys are all 2s. So we'll see if you guys want to change that.
No, I'm not changing my
Somebody
mind.
buys me lunch. Maybe
I'm not changing my
I'll go.
mind about pyramids. And when I talk about the sphinxes on another episode of the show, we're gonna get
Nobody bring it up, dude. It's gonna hijack. the
But it
whole
was
thing.
aliens.
It was alien.
Pyramids suck.